I'm going to share with you the behind the scenes of how I recently had my most successful chess course launch. I'm Grandmaster Max Illingworth, and I've been in this chess world for a very long time. Wow, it's something like 26 years. That's a really long time to spend on a board game. But something that I've always said to myself on this journey was that when I figure out how to make things work, whether that's as a chess player, as a chess coach, as a chess content creator, that I would share my insights and tips on, what I did, the challenges I went through, how I overcame those challenges, so that others who are then walking that same path that I walked, who are maybe a bit earlier in that journey, can have an easier ride towards getting to where they want to be. And you'll see also a picture of me and my wife at Christmas. Took me a very long time to edit the photo, but eventually we got there. So just to cover a bit what we'll be talking about, because I find that when it comes to, any sort of thing like with business or any kind of field, when people are sort of learning from someone, they often will focus on the results that person have. I went through that as well, that thought of, well, they're where I want to be, so let's just do what they did, and then, I'm going to get those results as well. But what you kind of see on the outside is really only the tip of the iceberg. And with this video, I just want to kind of break down some of the different things there that you don't see behind all of the content creation, behind the courses, behind the relentless, saying last call, get in before it's too late. And so I'll be talking about some other deeper things, such as my complicated relationship with chess, how I almost didn't even really start on this journey of content creation and course creation. Also talk about how I kind of modeled success, not just for courses, but in some different areas as well. And I definitely had a lot of psychological barriers over the last 8 or so years. Like, I've been working through it. Like, I'm still, working through them to this day. Because as you level up, they're going to be new barriers to overcome, right? I'll be showing you sort of how it kind of felt different this time. What I kind of did differently to get better results than I had for past course launches. At the end, I also kind of share what I could have done even better and just a little bit of a summary of some of the key things for you to take away. So yeah, this is going to be a bit of a longer video, but if you are relatively new to the channel, then do make sure to hit that subscribe button. That way you're going to get more videos like this one. This one's a little bit of an experiment. Normally I just focus purely on chess content, but I just felt that this was an important one to share with the world so that if you're wondering how to successfully launch a course, how to, make it in this world of chess as a financial career, then this can at least give you some insights in that direction, and maybe share a few tips that others may not have the courage to share with you. But first, I want to share a bit about my story. Like, if you've been following me for a long time, you're going to know quite a bit of this already. But there'll also be a few things here that I haven't really talked about much before. So obviously, my journey with chess started with playing chess. I still remember, when I was 6 years old, I was traveling to Europe with my parents, and I saw this giant chess set in Salzburg in Austria. And there were these old men, just grabbing the giant pieces and moving it. And, for me, it just kind of drew me in because from a very young age, I was already really into games. Like, I was beating my parents at Uno when I was like 3 or 4, and I was being at some other board games at 5 and 6 years of age. I don't share that to brag, but just to sort of show like that's the way my brain was kind of wired. Like, games were just kind of my thing, if that makes sense. So yeah, I kind of got into chess, and I'm going to kind of fast forward a little bit towards the later phase because that relates a little bit more to this video. I did become the Australian champion in 2014 and 2018. I became a grandmaster in late 2015, so I was already, I think, 20. I forget if I was 22 or 23, but like around that sort of age. And yeah, basically, like, I didn't, get a grandmaster at a super young age. Like, I was only, I think, a FIDE master when I was 18. So I did have to, work hard as an adult to make that final step, which means my story maybe will be a little bit more relatable to you, maybe, than, say, the child prodigy who got GM at like 16 or younger, let's say. Yeah, and I basically retired from tournaments in early 2019, and that's probably a more subject for another video, goes super deep into, but the really short reason is I just wasn't really enjoying playing chess for the last year. And I know a lot of people were kind of like giving me tournament invites, and I sort of felt, well, okay, rather than just turning him down every time. It'd just be better just to sort of explain why, and then people be like, okay, like I get why you're turning down these tournaments. It's not something personal as such. I do want to focus a little bit more on my story as a coach and also my story as a content creator. Like the way I kind of really started with coaching. So something to keep in mind, my mum actually was a horse riding coach for a very, very large part of her life. Actually, also a Australian champion as well, like Australian high point show jumping champion, as it turns out. So I suppose you could say like coaching maybe was a little bit in my blood, because her father, my grandfather, also was in the horse riding coaching business. And even though it's a different discipline with chess, I think that's where I kind of felt that spark, just to help people out for free, just if I saw a way I could help some of their chess just to kind of do it. I did that quite a lot as a child and as a teenager. It was I did just because it was a lot of fun and it just felt really rewarding because the thing is for me, I sort of didn't really connect with people in my area necessarily as naturally maybe as others might. That was something I kind of had to learn quite a lot and practice a lot over time. It didn't just come automatically. So for me, like chess was kind of a tool where I could actually sort of connect with people. Where I'd be like, okay, like I'm sort of doing something that makes them feel good, and then that kind of makes me feel good, and we sort of have like a better friendship than I would say if we were just talking about, I don't know, whatever teenagers talked about. It wasn't what I was talking about so much then, but I did end up starting like a paid coaching business in 2011, and after every lesson, I just think about kind of what went well so that I would be able to, replicate that for other students and other lessons. And also kind of think about what to improve. Like I was kind of thinking, what's the way I can make this lesson even better, even more valuable, even more engaging and entertaining. So that was kind of an ongoing process where I kind of sort of, I guess, coached myself a little bit through that. Now I definitely did also, learn from other resources those would come before me and, learn from their success. We'll get to that a bit later. But then, yeah, later on, I kind of eventually moved away a bit from private coaching in 2020. Again, I'll get to that more on the content creator part, but eventually I actually kind of did something bold. Like I pursued a dream that I had at that time, I think it was nearly 4 or 5 years. I had this dream of running a group coaching program, for chess. So I did that in 2022 and it was actually very successful financially. Like what happened was that it was like a bit of a stressful situation because like the way my brain works is that once I find like one thing, like that one thing I just like will get really laser focused on, just like spend all my time on that at the expense of nearly everything else as such, like just that sort of hyper focus. And so it meant that because I was putting so much time into like, sending like 100 messages on Messenger every day, like, doing all the sales calls and kind of, doing a lot of these different things. It meant that I was very successful financially. I was selling at a very high ticket price. I wasn't selling kind of like mid ticket like I see most other group, programs do. But I was like really am aiming for like the most premium, most valuable kind of product possible to really get students the results they were after, at the pace they would like. But yeah, there was kind of a lot of family stress because kind of their vision for they wanted me to do, and my vision for what I want to do were basically clashing quite a lot. And when I was trying to communicate my vision in a way they'd understand, like I just wouldn't really hear it or understand it. So it did feel like a very long journey, and I just really felt very burned out by the end of that whole process in 2022. So I kind of took a long break. Like I did a bit of private coaching. I started to get into that a little bit in 2023. Still got a few private students now. But that whole time I did feel like something was missing. And that was kind of a feeling that I even had actually all the way back from like 2016 to, 2019, where I just suddenly feel like kind of depressed and not really know why exactly I felt depressed. Like I knew something was missing, but it's like in lecture, I kind of saw a little bit what it was, but it was maybe something deeper as well, that sort of lack of fulfillment or like not feeling like I was making the impact I could make as such. And also, yeah, if you're enjoying the video, do make sure to leave a like button. I know this is going to be like a very long one, but I just want to mention out, just so that if you are enjoying this more experimental format, me having the PowerPoint, just me sharing some of my like really raw personal experiences, that way I know to, share more like this in the future. And I think that's something as well that kind of it's not so I wrote in the PowerPoint, but I think, having that courage to, try something different, and to sort of, follow your own truth, I think is an important thread we'll kind of see throughout, like me trying to figure out, what that truth is, as it were. Now for my story as a content creator, like one thing I notice a lot of YouTubers do is that they will sort of remove like the early videos. Like once they get really big, they'll just delete all the early videos because they're like, oh, I look like really bad. Like my video quality wasn't good. My voice was kind of weird. All this sort of thing. But I've actually decided to keep those earliest videos, even though you listen to my voice, like it sounds like really like not great. Like it almost sounds like a woman talking because I'd really damaged my vocal cords with lots and lots of coaching. No, I did end up like retraining myself and, I managed to get my voice back to, where it sort of broke properly in a sense, but, speaking more from my diaphragm naturally. But yeah, I've kept it because I think that, when people are looking at this channel sometime in the future and they're saying, well, I want to try to, do things, get inspiration from what my journey and try and make it work for themselves. If you see kind of where I sucked to really start, I mean, people are also starting and they're just like, okay, I didn't just start out this way. Like it was a long process as it were. But yeah, I kind of got into course creation in 2020 and sort of did more in 2021 as well. But it just felt very hit and miss. Like it's sort of I'd do some launch, like sometimes it would work really well, but other times it just wouldn't work that well. And I kind of noticed that if I was having like a lot of, let's say like personal stress or like stuff going on, like, there was getting my, sort of my head out of the game, then it wouldn't really sell as well. So it sort of felt a little bit inconsistent, a little bit unreliable in some respects. So I kind of took a long break from course creating at the end of like 2021. Like it felt like I was just relying on like one course launch just to kind of survive. And if it didn't work, I would just have, virtually nothing, which kind of sucks. So I had different phases of making YouTube videos. Like I know when I was in Vietnam, I had like a period of a couple months I was just doing like a video every single day, just scheduling in advance. But I would often stop just because I felt like it was really going nowhere. And so it kind of was this very stop, start. And that's kind of had been sort of the story of my life. Like even like since I stopped sort of playing tournaments, like my whole, identity at that point had been around, Max a chess player, it wasn't just about like coaching, it was like just everything was around chess. And so when my relationship with chess kind of changed, it just sort of I wasn't really sure where to go from there. And I know, by the way, that this is something actually it's very common when, sports people do retire from their discipline, that, there is that period of like trying to figure out, what to do, like what your life is going to look like when it's not all around chess. And, I'll be honest, like there was even a period I was like very like depressed after, like some months after I retired because I felt that I was moving in a new direction, like that I was really taking all these new things. But I just felt like every time I tried to express like this new self, that the people closest to me would just constantly shut it down. And so I felt like this very, I guess, incongruence between like how I was growing and the environment sort of around me that I had sort of been in nearly my whole life. And I will admit, like times that's still a process. Like even just last month, I was sort of thinking, I just feel so different to the chess people out there, and I think it took me a long time to reframe that as well. Having that different perspective, like having a different story, like that's not I feel like not a bad thing. Like that's actually a superpower, which is one reason I'm sharing it with you now. Okay, that was a bit longer than I originally planned, but I want to share with you a bit more about sort of the vision I had for helping others. Like as I said before, I just kind of start out helping people with chess just because it felt really good. Like it actually felt quite fulfilling. And what I noticed, I realized I kind of put the same thing in the in this as a before, but we'll press on. But yeah, I noticed that most players were just kind of facing the same struggles. And like what kind of happened is even when though I was using like different material for every lesson, it still felt like the lessons were often kind of the same, like the same few things kind of kept coming up. And I think that was kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to sort of go into a group coaching program, because I saw that as kind of an opportunity both to help students a lot more, because, it means they'd be getting, let's say, like maybe 4 to 5, maybe up to 7 hours of help with their chess each week rather than just that 1 hour a week, which just doesn't have that necessary volume. But yeah, I kind of have a bit of an interesting relationship with this, which we'll get into a bit later. But the thing is that basically, even though I had this dream of like helping people on a one to many level, just really having a much bigger impact than what was really possible with private coaching. My family wanted me to stick with private coaching as writing a lot of different articles, even though the articles honestly were not paying all that well per hour. They're saying, oh, like you got to get your name out there, and yeah, there's definitely some truth there. Like obviously, marketing is maybe the most important aspect because no matter how good your stuff is, if you don't know how to sell it, you're not going to impact people at the end of the day the way that you would like. Like even with free stuff, like even that sort of like kind of selling, like getting you to click on this video, get you to keep your engagement. Like it's all part of the game, whether you like it or not. But yeah, basically, I tried selling some low ticket subscriptions and courses, and I kind of realized that I just wasn't going to be able to do that organically. Like I would need paid ads for that, but it just wasn't really working. Like basically, I was sort of had someone who was helping me, but just like in terms of the values, just wasn't really a good fit. Like there was a lot of tension. Like we'd always disagree, and I mean, I sort of like agreed, to like take them on. So I mean, that's on anything like I mentioned. I was like, that's on me at the end of the day because I'm the one, who is the leader of this, of this enterprise at the end of the day. But what I eventually kind of realized is after this sort of trial and error is I needed a model that helped chess players to solve their biggest problems, but I needed it in a way where I wasn't going to burn out like in the past. Because I just burned out so many times before. And yeah, just sort of in hindsight, didn't really have the strategies I needed to overcome it. And maybe most why I didn't have the support I kind of needed to overcome it. Because I think that other people, like when they're on this journey, like you have support from someone, like maybe they have the support from their family, but often our families are not going to always get the vision or the direction that we're going. Because if you're not, it's very hard, like to understand exactly like where somebody is like hear them as they want to be heard, right? Like that's not an easy thing to do. Like it's a skill that constantly has to be trained if you want people to kind of feel, to feel like good connection. Um, I could talk a lot more about it. We'll kind of get into it in some of the later parts. So what I kind of did was basically I took the approach of basically modeling success, where I sort of, like I said before, I kind of was looking at where others were that got to where I want to be. So seeing, okay, that person, has sort of done that, like they have that proof that it's possible. So then it's a model for me to try follow as well. The thing is, like throughout my sort of teenage years, and also especially I'd say in my 20s, I felt like I was working very hard, but I wasn't always living up to my true potential. Like I still think back, for example, to when I would just be spending a lot of time on chess each day, but I used to say most of the time just like learning different opening theory, just like learning openings, like just kind of very repetitively, and not really sort of training quite as effectively as I could. Now, I will say, to be fair, actually learning openings, actually, if you do it the right way, can be a very effective way to improve your chess, even one of the most effective ways to improve your chess when you use the openings as a tool to work on all the other areas of your game. But that wasn't the connection I'd fully made it at that stage. So what kind of happened was while I was sort of, 2016, 2017, I guess would have these periods of feeling very down, just not really feeling like really doing it all, because I just felt like chess was really going nowhere, both in terms of my own improvement and also with like the coaching business feeling kind of stuck. Because it was kind of like, well, if I take more students, I'm gonna just feel like overwhelmed and not much time. But if I keep things as are, I'm just gonna be only scraping by kind of each month or each week, at least relative to my, sort of potential. So that was kind of like tough to deal with, and the way I kind of tried to work around that was I still got really passionate about self improvement in 2017. Like I started reading a lot of books. Like I'd always been reading a lot of chess books, but I started to read a lot of books on sort of other different topics as well. I guess got really kind of curious once again, as such. And it sort of helped me to kind of understand new perspectives just beyond like what I've been brought up with my family. Because I think it's something important to realize that, we were all born with this kind of conditioning of, okay, like these are sort of what our initial thoughts come from, but that, our life is obviously going to be very different from, the life of of our family members, and therefore the tools that, got them to, where they are not necessarily going to be what we need in order to go to level that we're aspiring for. But yeah, I found that of all the different self-improvement things I kind of explored, the most valuable one for me was definitely the high performance coaching. And I know for myself there's definitely going to be a time in the future. I don't know when exactly, but there will definitely be a time where I will launch a high performance coaching business and, share kind of like some of those insights, but that's probably going to be on a, on a separate channel to this one, as such, because it's, a chess channel. But yeah, that's what really helped me a lot. Like, actually, it was the very first high performance coaching conference I went to. That was actually where I kind of managed to fix my voice and, like, just, gain my voice back in more than one way, not just physically, but, in the metaphorical sense as well. Like, that alone was kind of worth the investment I made there, not to mention all the other things I got as well. But again, bit more a topic for another video. So yeah, in the end, like relating a little bit more to the courses, and you might notice as well, like with this, that I think people tend to really focus on the business journey, but sort of forget that business is kind of just a reflection of your personal stuff in a way. That the problems you're facing on your personal life, they're going to show up in your business as well. And not just in biz, like this is true just for any kind of discipline. Like when we sort of talk about things like, the psychology or the mental game, whether that's for, for sports or, or for other things, like that's kind of what it's going into, that by sort of getting on top of our thinking and the way we approach things allows us, to get the results that we're capable of. But yeah, basically I was sort of looked back, like when I was thinking, okay, what course am I going to launch first? I kind of realized if I did a completely new course, like I sort of would just burn out. Like it would just be, I would just have this like perfectionism where I just happened to me so many times where I would like think, oh, this looks good, man. Like add this, add that, add this, add that, and they would just be so big. I just would never like really get it done. I will admit, I actually felt a little bit guilty of this myself with the play the strongest Scandinavian course I eventually chose for my launch over the last week. And, if you've been watching any of my videos on YouTube over the last week, you'll probably know a bit about this launch because I was, doing a video just every single day on YouTube. I was like, okay, like this has to get done no matter what. Like, even if I'm feeling tired, even if, my family are like doing whatever, like I need to make sure I get this done no matter what. And I kind of was scheduling like the late afternoon, like early evening to get it done before my wife went to bed. I mean, it's true in 2020 my following wasn't as large. I think I had maybe a bit over 1,000 subscribers to my email list. Maybe it was a bit more. It might have been close to 1,500 around then. But what I was doing, I was basically sharing valuable emails daily. And also within like that course, I think one of the reasons that it was like my best-selling course even before this launch I did just now was that instead of focusing on the opening theory like I used to when I was an active player, instead I focused more on what I call the model games. So it's kind of just like explaining the ideas behind the games and sort of sharing it more from the perspective of, well, this is how you actually win games with the Scandinavian, rather than the perspective of, well, this is how you get a good position out of the opening, which is what I'd kind of been focusing on before. And I think that subtle shift, especially because it was so fresh to me, like I'd only recently made that revelation at the time, it meant that I was really passionate about it, and I think that really shone through in what I was writing. Emily, I wasn't doing like as many YouTube videos back then, but we'll get to the things I did differently a bit later on. But I feel like a part that's really important to talk about, and something I think that most people don't really talk about when it comes to, sort of achievement, is the psychological aspect of it. It's all well and good to know, okay, this is the strategy of like do A, B, C, and this is what's going to get you those results. But that's not the full story by any means, because it's not just about what you do, but it's also about how you do it, how you show up to those different things. Because if you don't show up with that kind of love for, or at least finding the love in what you do, and if you're, not kind of executing in a way where you're actually, listening to others intently, where you're kind of taking like what's true to yourself and sharing that, then it's just going to put a cap on like how far you achieve with that thing. But some of the psychological barriers I faced was, I mentioned before that I wasn't really enjoying playing chess anymore. I mean, I was still playing a bit of Blitz and Bullet online, like even after I retired, but it was like a very love-hate relationship where it's sort of, if I had good results, I would feel euphoric and elated, but if I had like a few bad games, I would just feel so like crushed and devastated. Like that emotion would just carry with me. Sometimes even for the whole day, like it would just completely derail my day if I just played bad chess, which I realize sounds kind of a bit silly, like now, like having a bit more perspective, but that's the headspace I was in. Like everything had revolved around, chess and like, my results and my coaching before. And so like I was still in that mindset even after I'd stopped playing, chess tournaments as such. Like still that kind of, I guess, competitive drive was kind of there. I think it always will be there for me. Like sort of, with that feeling like the motivation did have to come from somewhere else though. And I just felt very stuck with private coaching. Like I sort of made this point before I realized I kind of wrote the same points a few times, but I guess that just tells you which ones are really the salient ones. And I just felt I was often teaching the same kind of lessons, just very kind of repetitive. And I don't like the way my brain works. It's kind of weird because on the one hand, I kind of need that little bit of variety, just doing something a little bit different each day, just keep my brain engaged. But I also really benefit from having a very clear structure. So that's kind of the fun challenge, like how to incorporate variety into a structured approach. And I'll share a bit more about how I kind of did that, but I do want to talk a bit more about some of the other psychological barriers. Like I sort of, talked about this a little bit before about how my family kind of wanted me just to keep doing what I was doing, just because it was sort of safe and secure. And I think that when I sort of think about the conflict between like me and my family, like we sort of had, and I realized that now things are kind of like better now. Now we're sort of, I guess, willing to agree to disagree. So that's probably why I can feel I can talk a little bit more openly about this because the wounds have, I guess, kind of healed with time and with I don't know, with the support. But basically, I think the difference is that my family, and it's also true of my wife as well, like really value the security, like that sort of stable job, and having that steady paycheck, like knowing that that money's going to come in no matter what. And I think when I was sort of younger, like some years ago, I used to think like, okay, like that's just the wrong approach. The only way is to, have something where there's no ceiling on your income, where you can end up having passive income. Like that was kind of language that was circling a lot in my head around like 2018 to 2022 or so. But then later on, I kind of realized, there's not like there's sort of a right or wrong approach. Like, in the end, you kind of set the goalpost what works for you. And, if we're being honest, like most people, being in a business isn't going to be what the best thing for him is because, with a business, like you have to be very, motivated. You have to, you know, like just be able to like do things even when it's sort of tough. Like you'd have so much resilience, and you have to have a lot of different skills. Like you're not. It's not enough just to be a really good chess player or even just a really good coach in order to make it in business. Like you need to have a whole lot of other skills, like especially with marketing, just with general like communication, with sales. Like there's just so many different aspects. Like even with things like delivery, like structuring offers. Like there's so many different aspects to it, and this is not even getting into some of the psychological and mental aspects so much. Wow, I was talking so much that my voice kind of nearly went there for a sec. But that's basically the what I want to kind of share. That I think for most people, actually, it's better probably just to work for someone else than to run your own business as such. And I realize like peer watchers are probably going to be more the people who are more entrepreneurially minded as such. Got this far. But at the same time, yeah, I realize, it's not cowardly to say I don't want to do this. Like this isn't the thing for me. That I do need that sort of steady paycheck so I can just focus on my one thing that I'm really good at and just like really tap into that. Like there's absolutely like no shame or cowardice whatsoever in choosing that. Like it's about choosing what's the best for you. So I just wanted to kind of mention that before I sort of went a lot deeper in this sort of thing, like just understand that just because it's a path that worked for me, it doesn't mean it's going to be the path for everyone. But it's just my experience. You can take what you find valuable from it. But yeah, I think that's an important thing. Like, so you sort of have that curiosity, and kind of understand like where is the conflict coming from? Like, what's that perspective versus my perspective? You can then get a better understanding and sort of detach yourself a little bit from maybe the emotions that might be underneath those conversations with those closer relationships. But I mean, it was sort of my family, like, previously kind of really on board, like, we're all just trying to, sort of with me improving my chess, like making a living out of chess, but now it's sort of shifted from, well, how do we make a living and get by, to like, how can I actually, start to live up to my potential and actually help a lot more people the way that I would sort of like to, make that impact and make that difference in players improvement. A few more barriers, and some of these I also have kind of mentioned a little bit, but just I found that there were times I did hire the wrong people. Again, that's on me, not at all on them, which did kind of slow me down. There's often a lot of like conflict between what I want to do and what they wanted, as such. And so, the kind of what had happened is that there'd be like so much stuff like from the outside, just like the family, that I would still be so drained from that wouldn't allow me to show up as a leader I needed to be with like the people I had, to make those kind of fires promptly when things weren't working and so forth. And also, I know I got very fixated on short term results. Like, again, with my family having a more security based mindset, like, they're always focused on things such as, well, how can I just make enough money to get by? Or, how can I, sort of save up in a way? Like, for me, my sort of natural mindset in terms of like, in some ways, it's close to my father's. Like, I will have think for a lot from a investment point of view. Like, how can I get the most value from something? Or, how can I really make the best use of my time? Like, how can I level up my skills? And obviously, I'm biased in thinking that's a better approach because kind of my idea. But I do think that is sort of something that, and I know it's getting a little bit into some other topics, but I think that when it comes to getting people like on your side, like on the same page, like this sort of thing, I think that what helps, like more than almost anything else, in my experience, and this is really true for coaching especially, like, is just to listen and just give space. Because the thing is that a lot of the times when someone tries to share something with someone else, what they're going to do is like the other person going to like try to, give advice, or, going to try to, I know, like make it all about them in some way. Because, we are sort of the main character in our own story. That's true for all of us. But something, and this is something actually I kind of picked up from a coaching client I'm can't take the credit for this one, but there's this really great thing that they shared about, how it was why I mentioned I like the main character in, every person's the main character in their own story, or in their own life. And so if you really make it about them, like, what does this person need in this moment? Like, what would, help them the most? And a lot of times it's just leaving that space, just, shutting up and just listening. And I think that, in the times where I really have succeeded, like with different launches, like with this course and with this group, and with the group coaching before, it was when I actually listened openly to what people were telling me, like rather than, going in with my preconceived notion, I would say, okay, well, what is it that on the deeper levels, what people are looking for? And I think that's what I kind of managed to hit with this Play the Strongest Scandinavian course that I, relaunched just in the last week or two. I was able to figure out kind of what people really wanted, and then were able to present a way where I gave them what they needed. But yeah, I mean, it's just really helpful to just have that laser focus, like rather than, oh, do I do group coaching? Do I do courses? Do I write this? Do I focus on private coaching? When I was thinking like that, just I wasn't making progress on any of them. When I said we just do this one thing and just do that for the week and put up on my whiteboard, then that's what allowed me to have that focus and to actually, move the needle forward just a little bit each day. So yeah, in terms of like working through some of these things, like I already talked a little bit about some of that aspect, and I realize like this is a more personal video, so it's kind of natural. We'll go on different tangents, explore different areas, and like I'm not editing this video at all either, just giving you like just the raw thoughts as they come to my mind as such. Not filtering it out as it were. But as I was kind of working through all of this, like when I had like this massive crash, like in 2022, like this the pressure from the family just became too much, and like the business just wasn't able to really kind of like continue like selling and like bring new students in. I just had to like finish up the group program, which I kind of closed down in into early-ish 2023. I realized I needed a break from chess because I just had so much like unresolved like trauma like around it, like with the coaching and with the experience that kind of happened like with the family and all that. That it just meant that even when I just even tried to look at chess, like we even tried just doing anything with it, like my brain would just blank out as such. Like that was what was happening. It would be sort of a little bit unfair to say like PTSD because that's like obviously a very serious condition. That like very has a whole big impact. But I do think that what I was going through was kind of a milder form of that PTSD, where when I'd have that association like with chess, like my brain would just blank out and would just be just. It felt like this invisible force is kind of the wording I would use. Where it'd just be really hard for me just to do anything at all. Like my brain would just blank out and I just couldn't it's like I almost could like mentally do it, but it almost felt like I physically couldn't do it. Like that's how strong of a hold that it had over me. I knew that I needed to try something different, and I kind of, near the end of that time when like the, pressure was at the maximum, like when I was sort of, just felt like my brain was exploding, like to something that I probably shouldn't share, but actually there was one time where I think it was like a 24-hour period, like my family like just had talked to me virtually non-stop, like they literally didn't give my brain any time to rest, and I got so well, I went to actually like physically like just threw my phone like so many times on the ground until it break, and like that's not in my trial, like it was not, in that's like I never done something like that like before or since, but it's just like, it got so overwhelming that I just like completely broke down like that. So yeah, that was really tough. Like I just knew I couldn't like face this stuff with the chess, so I kind of got into like poker. Like I was doing that a little bit, and obviously it's not a poker channel, so I'm not going to go deep into that story. But what I kind of eventually realized after just a lot of time, just like really struggling, just to really make a lot of progress, was that you need money to make poker work. Like you really need to have quite a lot of money behind you in order to really be successful within the long term. At least if you're living in a first world country like Australia or the US or so forth. Obviously, if you're living in a country like say the Philippines, for example, then yeah, obviously you don't need anywhere near as much money to there to kind of live a good quality of life in a sense, meaning it's much easier to be able to like make these other different careers work because you don't need as much money to make it work in a sense. Like that's kind of I think like currency leveraging. That's the idea that it can. I mean, it is something I kind of was doing while I was in Vietnam. Actually, like that's why I kind of pursued the some of these things like the low tickets of course subscriptions in 2020, 2021 during the COVID pandemic because I was locked there in Vietnam, and I know some with private lessons that less people having lessons because a lot of people like lost their work. So it kind of gave me that sort of chance like to try something different, knowing that even if it didn't work out, I could still at least go back to other things later on and be okay. But yeah, like just the family pressure, the way that kind of showed up for me is I would just get really tilted after arguments. Like for example, I'd have a day where like maybe I like made like some money, like I had a really good day. I didn't just like run good, but like played really well. I made quite good money. But then my wife would just like have a big argument and just get like really mad about it. Or she'd like have a time like it was usually happen like about once or twice a month, which like plot points like you need to make money, like you need to make lots of money now, like what you're making now is just nothing. Like just kind of invalidating like all the effort I was putting in. And what happened is I'd have these times I just get really tilted and like, okay, I need to make like big money because sometimes like because she said I have to, and obviously that's a very close relationship, so like it affects you emotionally more than say if just even like a friend said it, for example, like it's a very different kind of level of connection. That's what happens. I just play it like stakes like way beyond my bankroll, just going like almost like a double or nothing almost kind of like mindset. And okay, it's true I ran badly, but ultimately like I only have myself to blame like for not having the proper bankroll, just kind of like having that kind of seesaw of like making a lot of progress, like doing the right things, having the discipline, and then just like blowing it all just in one like day of like the emotions just kind of getting the better of me again because I hadn't resolved that sort of trauma, that PTSD that I mentioned before. And even though it was in a different discipline, it was still kind of showing up in that way. Funny, I like got so focused on this, like I completely forgot that my mobile phone was in the room still. Like that's what I mean about the hyper focus. I get so focused on like this video and just delivering and talking like all having like the circle of thoughts, like 10 thoughts ones, like which one do I share, which one do I remember? So like forget something simple like the mobile. So yeah, that's just how my brain works. But yeah, that's just sharing a little bit about that journey, like kind of realizing that okay, if I'm going to make things work, like make my life work the way I want to, at some point I just have to get help. Like I knew I wasn't resolving it on my own. I knew I needed some like actual like professional help to actually like talk things through and and I think that the half the value of it honestly was just having someone where I could just sort of share my thoughts, knowing that I wouldn't get interrupted, knowing that I wouldn't get like a I don't know 10-minute monologue to one like offhand sentence that I made. Like that was a really big thing. I'm getting emotional talking about this. But I did end up like seeing a psychologist and just like talking through there's different things with them. And I think one of the big things I got, like even from the very first session, what I kind of realized was that the feelings I was experiencing, I think a lot of the time I'd had this guilt around the feelings, like what I'm feeling is like not normal, is not right. And what I kind of realized is these feelings actually are kind of normal. Like, being an entrepreneur is like a really tough journey. Like, these things I've sort of like chosen to do in my life, like, being a chess professional, like being being an entrepreneur, like, doing like poker, try and make that work professionally. Like, these are some of the toughest things like you can possibly, choose to do as a career. Like, I get that maybe you're not, fighting on the front lines in a war, like, literally fighting for your country, but like, it's still pretty high up there on like the level of like just that stress and like what it kind of demands of you. And at the end of the day, if you don't have that support that you need, then you're just going to struggle like a lot more. Like you're just going to feel it so much more strongly when you don't have, someone who not even they don't even necessarily have to get it, but just someone who like holds the space for you. It's just I don't know. I've said before, but like it's so valuable. Like literally, if that's the only thing you get from this video is just like listen to people and just hold the space for them, just let them talk. Like I swear that is going to change your life so much. I promise you. But the thing is that all that journey with poker, like, my family say, oh, you wasted all this time with poker, or like, why do you do it? Like, you're just, getting addicted. And that was another thing as well. Like, what my family thought that what I was having was like, was having an addiction. And, if I was addicted, I would be like very upfront about it. Like, I've definitely been addicted to bullet games, and blitz chess. Like, I've definitely had addictions like to games in the past. Like, there's no doubt about that. But at the same time, I knew it wasn't like addiction. I just knew they just didn't get it at all. That I was using it as a tool to work through different things, but also having something where, like, I think what attracted me the most to poker, like, it wasn't just the game aspect of it, like, it being like a fun strategy game, but also when I was in the moments, like, my brain would just be blank. Like, I'd just be completely in the zone, just completely focused on what I was doing. Kind of like the feelings I had with chess when I would play well Like the brain just goes blank just completely in the moment. And I probably should do a video at some point in the future of how to get in the zone, because that's a pretty awesome topic in itself. But that was sort of the feeling I was getting from poker, and I think that's what was not I wasn't getting at any other area of my life. Because thing is, like when I would try to focus on different things in my place, like what would happen is like we have, there's four people living in a place, like, not so much room, like just in an apartment. And our apartment's probably larger than average, but still not the largest space, let's say. But what happens, like, I'd often have like a lot of interruptions. Like, say my wife would like be talking on the mobile. I was trying to focus on work. Like, my mum would come in and like maybe, I mean, even for normal people, like when you're sort of distracted for a moment, it can take like up to 20, 30 minutes to get back on track. But for me, yeah, it would just take me some time to get back on track. And if there were like interruptions stacked on top of one another, it would just take longer and longer for me to get back into it. Or like if I had like a big argument, say what would often happen is like I'd have a big argument with my wife. Like my wife had a big argument about something like usually financial, sort of at like 11 or midnight. So instead of like falling asleep, I'd just be so like rattled. I would just be up the whole night and my sleep patterns would just be completely sort of ruined. I know I went on like a little bit of a tangent there, but at the end of the day, like that time with poker wasn't wasted, because that experience of learning something completely anew, like going into it, like being a student again, it really made me a much better coach. Not just in terms of being able to relate a lot more to what that journey that other my students are going through, but it also I just picked up a lot of new ideas, like a lot of new perspectives. Like I focused so much more on the practical aspect of chess after that. I also started to dive a bit more into some other things, like sort of I call like how to sort of punish the opponent's mistakes. I really dive quite deeply into that, as it were. So it kind of meant that I sort of felt that I'd become a much better coach. And also I will say, like, there were also some really good poker coaches. I also went through their material and I did actually apply a lot of the teaching techniques they were using. Like they're using techniques that none of the chess coaches were really using, and I did actually apply that to my own coaching, and I did notice really a big difference in the quality of the lessons and how much my students were improving. The thing is, even though I felt that I was enjoying the lessons, I just felt like I was surviving but not thriving. Like I felt like I kind of was. This getting me emotional. I felt like I was living my family's life, like what they wanted for me, not what I wanted for me. I felt like I was living their story there. Okay, just have that steady paycheck, like just be sort of comfortable, rather than my story of, well, let's. Sorry, I'm getting emotional again. But yeah, just that story of, let's grow, let's have some great experiences. Let's have something to look forward to again. That's what really drives me. And that's why I felt, that, there was that, like that room for growth with, poker, even with like the group coaching program, in a way that I just wasn't feeling like with the private coaching. So yeah, in 2025, I just started to get the support that I needed. For example, I started seeing the psychologist again. I also saw a relationship counselor with my wife, and that kind of helped me to kind of understand what my wife kind of wanted, just to be able to get a little bit more on the same page. I also started getting like high performance coaching, where it was kind of like a really fun thing. Like this one, I kind of want to talk about a bit, because basically I was part of like this circle. It's still going now. Like obviously I can't share like too much about it due to like confidentiality things, but to sort of give a short version, basically, the way it worked is that you got coaching from someone else each week, but then you also coach someone else each week. So you got to be both the coach and the coachee. And what's really fascinating about it is like, there's no doubt like I got so much value out of my coach, and I'm really grateful for them, for kind of being on that journey and just helping me, because they really helped me to feel like heard and understood and appreciated again, which something I hadn't felt in so damn long, man. But I think I also got just as much actually from actually doing the coaching myself. Because by doing the coaching, like I was spending a lot of time like preparing this game, kind of thinking a lot more about things. And also my client, I'm not going to say their name here, obviously, but they're also like really great to work with as well. Like I honestly got so many great ideas from my client, like just seeing their passion for high performance, like their enthusiasm for their life, and just all the really great insights that I was sharing when I just like gave them that space, just heard them out. Like I was picking up all kinds of great, epiphanies for myself. And obviously, the session, like it's not about me, it's about them, but still it had a really positive impact in my life, like just, helping someone who's on that kind of wavelength, who thinks a little bit more like me in those respects. Like it just shows you the power of the influence, like when you have that person that you let into your life who is really good influence, like that mix of support and also challenging you is just, it's an absolute game changer. And if I'm being honest, I think that when it comes to like the private chess coaching, like a bit of the disconnect I felt is that I was seeing like how impact like the high performance, like how much this was transforming someone's life. And I was seeing that with the chess coaching, it was more focused on improving a person's skill. It wasn't so much about developing them as a person. And I guess like that thing of like developing someone as a person, that's like you probably feel it different. Like I'm lighting up, I'm like talking out in a much more excited way. But yeah, this really changed my year. This was of all things that changed my year. This was one of the biggest ones, and I think that this process of coaching it really helped me to open up a lot more with my wife to not be afraid of her just being critical, like just being like negative, like shutting down everything I was saying. Like that's what I was kind of feeling because like with my wife and my mum, like at times it felt like a blur, which was which. Like I learned to sort of differentiate those conversations a bit, which made things a bit easier and sort of see things a bit more of a detached perspective. I think with that understanding just kind of came less conflict. Like to give you an example, like say, like actually, shared the news, with my mum about this launch. Also probably should give a little bit of context here. Like my dad has been like depressed for the last, what is it, 22 years or 23 years, something like that. We'll say 22 years. So not the most talkative, kind of just keeps out of the way, and the most things stays in his own circle. And my mum also has had some like challenges as well. Like she's been legally blind for like a very long time, like for the last nearly 20 years. So has had various problems with her vision. So I think that's something I understand as well. Like it's not like let's say a normal kind of situation. Like there's obviously different struggles that my parents are also facing, like some due to old age, some other different things. But I think that's something we should probably like empathize with as well as I talk about this. But yeah, like it was kind of really, it actually felt really good to like just to share, that sort of, oh, like look at these sales I made, like, not even from like perspective, like trying to get like, sort of recognition or approval, like I think I was trying to before. They were just like, I'm just going to share, it's like, I don't even care like how they respond to me, but I just want to share it, like just so have them be part of the journey and have them, be able to kind of celebrate with me if they want to, and, whatever their responses, I don't really mind. But yeah, it just felt really good just kind of be able to share that moment without being afraid of their response. It was kind of it came from like a really good place this time. That was a difference. So yeah, so that was very very long into the weeds of it, but that's what we're here for. And I also realize I've talked a little bit about how this launch kind of felt different, but I do think that having talked a lot about the personal side, which I think was really the most valuable aspect, or at least the part I think that people tend not to talk about. Like people like, really are very focused on the strategy, mostly when it comes like to business and different things. And I know certainly that I was, but this time my approach was very different in that I wasn't focused on the strategy of like how do I get the maximum sales or like how do I get like the most students signing up or like what's gonna move the needle like in terms of I wasn't really thinking in those kind of terms honestly. And I think that in terms of like how people respond to my content, I think people kind of felt the difference, like that it wasn't like it didn't feel like I was trying to sell something. Like obviously, you have to like sell or people aren't going to buy, but it sort of felt a lot more. I think natural. Like it felt a lot more naturally me. I think this time compared to past times, I was just following a strategy that someone had told me, or you're saying, "Oh, someone said I should do this, so I'm going to do it as well." But this time, I felt it really came from, okay, I'm just going to trust my own sort of intuition and feeling, and just kind of go with what feels right. And I think that worked a lot better. Like it's kind of, and it's something actually one of my past private students, I have to give the credit for this. Like he told me about, it's not about having to do something, but choosing to do something. So this time I kind of chose to do, this launch in the chess rather than like having to do it for money. Like that was a really big shift. Like my family focused on, oh, you have to do this, you have to do that to bring in money. And I just kind of zone out when people talk like that, honestly. Like it's not a way to have, freedom to, really feel great about what you're doing. If like you have to, like I already like I'm getting, I'm getting deflated just saying the words here, even as a as an offside thing. But the language you choose is just so important. Like, just one even a shift of like one word can really like change completely how you feel about something, I also decided to focus on what I love. Like, even from a very young age, like I was what would call like a fury hound or like opening nerd, like just or nowadays I guess the word would be like a theoretician, like a chess theoretician. Sounds a lot better than that. But yeah, that was my passion from a young age. I just kind of got back into it. I said, okay, let's focus on the openings. Like in the past, like in 2021, I was focusing on openings because, well, that's what sells the best historically. That's what my thinking was. But the weird thing is, my mind didn't even think in those terms that much. I was like, well, I love openings. Like, I know this course, like, is, a lot of fun. So let's just, go with it, just roll with it and just teach whatever, the students need using the openings as a tool. And this is sort of where I came up with like the source and veg. Well, I mean, I didn't come up with it. I got it from elsewhere. I was kind of reminded of this a little bit of like the sauce and vegetables metaphor, which basically, and if you watch my videos a lot, you'll notice one already. But basically, it's where when you're sort of trying to feed your kids vegetables, like they're like, oh, vegetables are icky. I don't eat the vegetables. Like, let's say if I did a course on calculation, you'd be thinking, well, yeah, I know I need to work on calculation, but damn it, it's such a hard topic. I've had a hard day at work. The wife or kids just been chewing me out, and I just don't really feel like doing it right now. Like that's literally how I would think as well. I got calculation. Like it was so hard for me in the past to do work on my calculation. I put in those terms, but when you put like the sauce over it, the kids like, oh, the sauce looks really good, and like they eat the vegetables, and they don't even realize like they're eating the vegetables. Like, oh, this is like something else, but they're eating it, they're enjoying it, and you're sort of getting the benefit as a way. So that's kind of what I did. I realized, okay, the opening is going to be the source. Like the source, I mean, I guess the technical mark term is the hook, but like it's sort of the source where, okay, you've got the openings, like you're going to feel confident, you're going to be really excited, all these different ideas and fun games. But then the vegetable is going to be like the actual teaching, where I sort of, say, okay, what would you play in this position here? And then we'll sort of, talk it through from there. Also things like, okay, well done if you found this move in this position. This opening's good. It's good for black, but now this is, how he actually won the game. Like this is how, you actually converted the advantage in the actual game setting. This is how you set up those favorable exchanges and favorable tension between the pieces and pawns so you can outplay the opponent. But if I use that sort of language like in the marketing, the thing is that, I mean, maybe I will try it at some point. It would be a fun experiment to see how receptive people are to me saying, like, you aren't thinking about this and you need to think about it. But by kind of entering the conversation where other people are at, I think that really helped me to kind of provide this mass value where, just because like I had this phase where I was kind of talking quite a bit about kind of mental game and psychological stuff because that's kind of what I was feeling passionate about. But it wasn't necessarily what people were kind of thinking about so much. It was like a completely new conversation. But with my mass value, like kind of this concept I sort of developed last month. Actually, I think I developed it while I was at my yoga retreat, which I'll on in February, which I'll get to a bit later. But the idea of the mass value is basically like, okay, this is value that's just going to the masses. So that's kind of what it means. But also, mass, it kind of ended up encapsulating also this shift to more longer form content as well, with kind of, just really making much longer videos, just going a lot deeper into things, just having those deeper conversations. And it's funny because, like, I remember before, like, my wife was kind of telling me things like, oh, you need to do shorter videos, like, attention spans are getting shorter and shorter, like, you need to, be with the times, like, do the shorts and stuff. And I will admit there's some truth to that, like, probably, I should be doing more shorts at some point, because I've heard it's a very good way to get a lot more people, and I didn't used to watch shorts much, but, like, I do actually watch, a few shorts each day, and I kind of really enjoy just that little bite-sized content. But there is absolutely still a place for longer form content, and I think that just by kind of watching different YouTube videos, just watching a bit each day, kind of figuring out, oh yeah, this is what really clicked with me, but then thinking, okay, well, why is it clicking? Like, what are the, actual techniques they're doing to, grab my attention, to keep my attention, to get me, wanting to click the next one. Like, I just thought about that just from a lot of different fields, and I feel like I was kind of able to apply it in some little ways with chess. In terms of how else it also felt different, yeah, the yoga retreat. So basically, this yoga retreat I actually went with my mum for a couple of days, and this is really funny actually. Now I think about it, but like, what would happen is like I do this yoga, like we do like it's sort of a meditative kind of yoga for like 1 hour. Sometimes it's a bit longer, but usually like 1 hour. I just feel like so good, like my mind would just be completely blank because like I just laser focus on this yoga retreat. Just like okay, I'm just gonna just be in the zone, just be present all the time. Like that's what I was going for. And then what would happen is like we'd be both like I'd be in like my bed, she'd be in her bed, like in the double, twin room we were sharing, and she'd just be like talking and talking quite a lot, and I'm just like, I just wanted my mind just to be clear. And the weird thing though is that like what happened is like because I'd kind of like been practicing a little bit like before the retreat, like she would talk and like it just would hardly affect me at all. Like in the past, like the chatter would just make my brain just like really tired, but this time it just didn't. So I mean that was a big win in itself. But yeah, in terms of how else it felt different, like just going back to the to the course content, because I mean that's what you clicked on this for, obviously. I just again had that laser focus on one project. You already kind of talked about that a bit. How the focus is what brings results. Remember, there was like a really good quote about laser focus. I think it was by Darren Hardy or Tony Robbins. I've completely forgotten it now, but maybe someone can put in the comments and remind me what that quote was about focus. But anyway, also, another idea is I also kind of under promised and over delivered because I originally had planned to do like 13 updates to the course, but actually end up like having 20 set out. And I think I completed like maybe like 14 or 15 of them. I think I have a couple are like partly done and a couple that still need to be created from scratch. But I do have like all of the stuff there, and obviously I'm going to be recording that over the next stage to complete the to kind of complete the course for the students so that it is something that it doesn't have to need to be updated so much in the future. Like by working really hard and doing the job really well now, it just saves me a lot of time later on. I already kind of talked a lot about the switch to long form content, but I think something else that really helped was really kind of shifting a little bit more to personal experiences. Like, because when I launched the Scandinavian course in 2020, I hadn't really played the Scandinavian as much. Like, I played in a bunch of like unrated games on like chess.com bullet just to mess around. But this time I had a lot more experience playing in actual like rated games online. Like, I played it in so many games on chess.com and Lichess. I think I said this in one of my previous videos, but I think I've played like over 1,000 games with the Scandinavian now across all the different chess servers and over the board games. So it meant I kind of had that experience. I could sort of share a lot more of those experiences. Like I kind of just cherry pick like the most instructive, the most fun, the most engaging examples, and then present it as the free value just to really help you get a to help people kind of just get a lot more out of it and just sort of feel they could relate a little bit more to the opening just on that personal level. It's like, okay, this worked for Max, but the ideas are actually not that complicated. Like I could sort of see myself being able to play it for myself because there was something one business mentor told me like nearly 5 years ago. It was like a really good point that there are only like sort of three reasons really why someone is not going to buy from you. It's either that they don't trust you, like they don't know you well enough, this sort of thing. They don't trust you to be able to give them results. They don't trust what is you're offering. Where like, okay, I like you, Max, but the Scandinavian not really the solution to my problem. Or they don't trust themselves. It's like, well, yeah, Max, your course is like really good. I really like you and stuff, but I don't really believe in myself. Like, I don't know if I'm even gonna, get the course done. Like, even if I do go through it, like, I might still blow these winning positions like I've been doing the last like 20 years of my life. That's the idea. Like, when you sort of tap in a little bit more into like the pain points, you can kind of, understand like, what is that people actually need because at the end of the day, you're only going to do something if there is some sort of motivation and obviously, like in our minds, like positive motivation is kind of what we're usually aiming for, and I definitely had that. But in a lot of cases, like what gets someone actually doing something is just that thought of like what is it costing you? Like what is it costing me not to do anything? Because there's something else also kind of picked up from my students as well. Actually, like for the high performance, I really love just really great, brilliant thing they shared of it. Of rather than thinking like what is it costing you, like to to do something. Like say I'm trying to remember like the exact wording. Like I'm sort of been recording for a long time, and brain is needing a little bit of a break maybe because my sleep has been so crazy last week while doing this launch. But there was a really great point about like sort of reframing that question of what is it costing you. So instead of saying like what is it costing me like to do something, like say for example, oh yeah, I could go to the gym, but then I'm not going to have enough time for this other thing that I want to do. Or maybe a better example could be at least taking for my own life, well, yeah, I could really focus on, private coaching, but I'm not going to have, that flexibility in my schedule to want to be able to, like, go on a holiday or, like, play a poker series or something like that. But the way that my client reframed it, I absolutely love this was, well, what is it costing you not to do it? And I feel like that's where a lot of really great communication comes from when you're able to shift someone from thinking of, well, I'm not doing this because of this to, well, I'm doing this because if I don't do this, then this is what it's going to cost me. Just such a powerful shift. And it just goes to show, I think, that when it comes to really high quality coaching, and it's like, if you're a coach once, it's like, you should definitely be writing this one down is this idea that basically the most valuable thing you can often give someone, other than like just hearing them out, like giving them space, is just helping them to have different perspectives. And especially when they feel that perspective kind of comes from them rather than you forcing it onto them, that's when the magic can really happen. And I will admit it's harder to do that with a course than in like a one-on-one session, but I feel like with the Scandinavian course, maybe I've made a little bit of progress in shifting people's perspective and realizing, the Scandinavian, it might not be the most common opening in the world, but it's worked really well for me, and it's really easy to learn, easy to play, and it can absolutely work for you. I will be like, I've been saying it so like even like for like so for those last 9 days, like even when launched, like I'm still like in that mode right now. But that's what I mean about the laser focus and the personal experiences. Um, so yeah, in terms of how else it felt different, this one I think I might have skipped past one. Yeah, there we go. So also I kind of just really brought a lot more passion. Like I kind of, from day one, I really saw this kind of as just a labor of love. Like I know that that's one thing that one of the most prolific authors in the world are, and a friend of mine, I am Cyrus Lakdawala. Like, yeah, I think he really sees like every book project like a real labor of love. Like he's not really thinking outside like how much money it's going to bring, but it's like really just in the moment, like it's really absorbed in the writing. And I felt like I kind of did that in my own way a little bit with this course. Like I just really felt love. Like I didn't think in terms of say, oh, like this course is like only a little bit over like $1 per training video. Like I didn't even think in those terms. I just thought about I love doing this. It's just so much fun to talk about the Scandinavian, share different games, and help people improve their chess. And just never have to fear E4 again. Like it just felt like a lot of fun just do it. Like it didn't feel like a chore to do these videos like it used to. Like that's a big difference. I think that showed up in my effort as well. Like previously what I'd do is I'd kind of treat like the thumbnails a little bit of an aside. Like I'd just be like, oh, people just don't get me like with YouTube, like, oh the metrics just kind of suck. But I think it took like probably 10 or 20 times watching our videos before this sunk in, but kind of realize that, it is on you. Like, yeah, this is a long game, but like in the end, like you're responsible for your own results here. Stop blaming others was kind of what eventually got drilled into my skull at some point. So that kind of showed up. I started to put a lot more effort into thumbnails. I thought, you know what, these thumbnails actually aren't that hard. Like I can actually, make a pretty decent thumbnail if I actually put in a bit of effort. And I've got a lot better at using Canva over the last month or so. And also, yeah, just kind of like thinking about the delivery as well, like, not just kind of like just hitting record and just doing whatever, like, rather than just preparing the chess base, I think, okay, like, how do I actually want to deliver this? Like, what's the kind of energy I want to bring? Like, what's maybe something I want to try a little bit differently? Like, am I going to try speaking like really fast and then maybe a lot more slowly and make a little bit more of a dance? Or am I going to like maybe use a bit more gestures? Or am I going to like ask more questions? Am I going to ask like that semi question of like, well, if you have been struggling with this, then dot dot dot. So like I'd be just thinking about that, and I think I'm feeling that that passion for the content creation a lot more. Because if you think about like with YouTube and course creation, there are a lot of like parallels in terms of the content, and I think that yeah, kind of tapping more into that. Like previously, I've just been kind of curious about like I just maybe like occasionally watch a video just out of curiosity, but it was always kind of in the back of my mind, and just I've started to have like that little bit more, kind of success like with this course launch. That's kind of what led me to shifting from, well, rather than focusing on the number of subscribers, number of views, comments, likes, rather than thinking about that the way maybe my family might focus more on. Instead, I thought, well, let's turn YouTube into a funnel for selling this course. And I think that that approach like just led me to show up a lot more different. Realize that, okay, if I do a half-ass video, it's just not going to get any sales because that's what happened the last 40 times. So let's do something different, see what happens. And I do think that's like a big reason why I had a lot more sales, because last time I wasn't using YouTube effectively to sell, but this time I was doing much longer videos, just giving a lot more value. And also kind of just where mindset going into, I just felt that, what, with everything I've kind of struggled with like the PTSD, with like the group coaching stuff, or like the on and off depression at different times, I was like, in my mid sort of to mid 20s, all these different kind of things. I thought, even if I get one sale a day on average from this launch, that would be really epic, because even though that might not be a massive amount of money overall, it's still like such big progress. And I think that by not saying like expectations like so massively high that I would just feel disappointed, I think that that really helped, because it kind of gave me that motivation of, oh, like I'm actually doing better than I thought I would. Maybe we should, keep working at it. It just gave me that sort of that fuel just to kind of keep going. Like even when I didn't feel like it, just to kind of put in that that video. Like even if I didn't have a really great video idea, like just put out something and just, see what kind of works. But yeah, definitely did think a lot more about the videos as such. Like I will admit this one I created, like I just created this one because like, okay, I've done so many chess videos in the last week, I just need to do like a non-chess one just for that variety for my brain. But yeah. Also in terms of, like the necessity, like I think that if you're not doing something that you kind of know, let's say in your heart that you should really be doing, well, it really comes down to like just figuring out your why. So kind of I realized that this say was coming from needing like the money, like I was in a spot like, okay, I have bills coming up, I need to, I need to pay for these bills in a sense. But I was really just more focused there, like I said before, on just giving value, just figuring out, okay, what is it that people actually need? And just sort of giving it, but in a way that, actually grabs people's attention. Like that was the balance I was really struggling to find, but I think in the last week I finally it started to click a little bit in my mind. Also, I just kind of would brainstorm ideas with ChatGPT, like, oh, what do you think about this idea? Oh, how would I make this title better? Like, I was thinking all about things like that, like every day for these videos. And if you notice, like a little bit of difference, say between the title, of the video and what it says on the first slide, then yeah, it's because I like refined it after recording. But anyway, moving on to what I did differently. Some of these things I've already kind of talked about before, but the first thing I did differently was kind of not really having that outside influence of, oh, I'm just doing this because someone told me to, but just doing it all myself. Like, okay, everything I'm doing this is kind of my decision. I'm doing this because it's my idea, not because it's someone else's. And I kind of just stuck to my guns where, again, I kind of talked about this before about how my wife's saying, oh, you need to do short form content, like a lot of shorts, a lot of short videos. But at some point I just said, you know what, I disagree. I actually I'm gonna do long form content. Like if the video is over an hour long, so be it. I don't mind. I trust the people, who find the content valuable, like they're gonna keep watching, they're gonna stay engaged and, just kind of rolling with it in that way. And I will say, like, that's probably one of the very best decisions I made. Like, I honestly don't think I would have had anywhere near as many sales as course if I had just done like 5 to 10 minute videos instead of these, videos like kind of close to an hour. Because I kind of noticed that when I did briefly record shorter videos for a day or two, just because at that time, like, I had a sore throat. Like, I kind of would get a sore throat if I was talking much. So I kind of did shorter videos, and I kind of noticed that it did mean that, there weren't as many sales as when I did, like, the really long, like, 40-minute plus ones. So yeah, sticking to my guns really helped a lot. And now when I kind of talked about this bit, but just, like, really falling in love with the opening, falling in love with Scandinavian just meant that I was putting out a lot more videos, both in YouTube and also for the students of the course, like also just doing a lot, more like blogs and also like longer blogs and ones as well. Like there were times I would spend like an hour or even a bit more than an hour, like writing one sort of like email or one, article, just get kind of lost track of time, just got really focused in it, which really helped a lot. And I mean, the fact that, the Scandinavian also is kind of my best performing opening against E4 and Lichess, that made it much easier, I think, for me to sell it. Cause like, okay, I have the results to kind of back it up in a way. Like, I use myself as kind of like the guinea pig for, this kind of thing in a, Tim Ferriss kind of style, let's say. But yeah, also some other things I did differently. And again, like, I know there's some overlap because, kind of, I did know, spent like an hour preparing this PowerPoint. Like, I told take one point and put it in a different spot to where I'd written it. But basically, I just really aimed to share just more of my personal experiences. Like, for example, when I did that very, like, my favorite gambit versus E4, rather than, something else. Or, I talk about, like, how I, was how to destroy players below 200 with this black opening. Like, those are my two best performing videos by far over the last week and a bit. And then those are the times, like, the thick commonality was that I was sharing my very personal experiences, basically. Like, I was sort of sharing my story. I don't think, like, when you sort of read story, like, you might think, like, YouTube story, but I mean it more in terms of the stories, like, just telling a story, like, just kind of like I'm doing it this video, like, I'm sort of telling you, like, my story of how I, behind this course, because I just realized that there was just so much behind it that I just felt, I should share this, like, not just to, like, help others, but also in a way, like, it kind of helps me as well, because it gives me a model of, okay, I'm actually, like, teaching others what I kind of did, and it's just going to mean it's going to stick a lot more strongly for me when I do my next course, like, oh, this is then going to be right on my mind, rather than, like, trying to, oh, what was it that I kind of did again, And also just really, like, focus on kind of solving problems, like, I know, like, the language I use, I think that really resonated with people was when I was saying, like, never fear E4 again, or, face E4 with confidence for the rest of your life. I think that use that language, like the fear, the confidence, was really very powerful. And, that sort of language of confidence is something that is really the ultimate feeling of high performance. So I do think that incorporating a little bit of that high performance language. And it's funny because like I was sort of the high performance come like so automatically like a part of who I am now. I didn't even think of it as high performance. I thought, well, this is just like natural language to me. So that was kind of like a little bit of a sort of shift within myself on this launch. And yeah, just kind of sharing more diagrams and more games like in the YouTube videos. I was, rather than just taking like one game and talking through it like I used to, I started just to share like quite a lot of different games to show again more perspectives and to, not be afraid to go a little bit faster with some of the games. I kind of speed through a few of the more critical, the few of the less critical moments, and then spend more time on the really key stuff, as it were. So I think that definitely helped a lot as well. Um, I mean, I would kind of mention as well, like the thumbnails. Like, I think making much better thumbnails also led to much better engagement. Like, I really noticed the difference there. And also kind of like not being afraid to, just kind of sell, you're saying, okay, this is my course, you should get it. Like, kind of, obviously, using more, in more, let's say, expressive, more, nice kind of language and just that, but essentially like saying like this is why you should get the course, like not being afraid to say that. I think it is much easier to do that, when I really believe, when I really believe in this course. Like I've created like so many really good videos. I had such great results with like that's I think passion and that sort of like belief just really, really shone through in what I was sharing. Whereas with past course launch, it didn't so go as when it was something that I didn't really believe in, or maybe someone just doing because someone else did or someone told me to do. I find that this one, because it was really all coming from me, that really made a big difference. And in terms of like kind of just from the some of the more like I guess like personal kind of things, like this isn't maybe so much. I mean, it is sort of business related, but it's kind of on the more personal level, if that makes sense. I did share the journey a bit more with the family. Like I told my wife, look, I've done this launch day. Like, oh look, it's like I got this sale, and she sort of would just be so happy. Like I would literally see my wife's entire expression change when she saw like two or three sales come through for the day. It's like, ooh, like that's kind of what you'd say, like a lovely Vietnamese accent. But yeah, that's the kind of I guess kept me kind of going, like just that sort of positive reinforcement. And I think that at least for people like me, like whose brains are wired a little bit differently, like we really thrive a lot on having that kind of support, that, that recognition, that acknowledgement. Like, I think everyone really needs a cheerleader, but I think that for neurodivergent people, like, it's especially valuable and especially important. And, like, that's something that, I know this isn't really, like, to business at all, but just, like, saying, like, if you want to help someone, like, who is wired a bit differently, who maybe feels like they aren't always heard or understood, like, just having that kind of space and, like, just, like, just figuring out what they need and, like, just, like, meet them on their terms, not yours. Like that's really a big difference. And I mean, it's just a good life principle as well. Like treat others the way they want to be treated, not the way you kind of want to treat them in a sense, if that makes sense. Also, I think what really helped was being praised for effort, not results. Like even though I'm not a parent, like I know one of the concepts of effective parenting is that if you always praise your child for results, so then they're going to like associate their self-worth with results, and then they always feel like they have to meet a higher standard they're never going to get to. Whereas if you praise for effort, they're a lot more likely to go ahead. And I think that my family and people around me kind of doing that praise my effort also helped me to kind of keep going and just show up in a different way. Also, just a big one, like I was spent like a month or more, I think. Yeah, it was about a month where I was kind of recording these videos, but it just felt like it was just so far away. Like I was sort of, because I hadn't just started, I realized, okay, I just need to, if I'm going to swim, I just need to jump in the water and figure it out as I go. Like even I'm like doggy paddling and, trying to like float and this sort of thing. Like if I need the buoy to come in and, and save me, like just, just get in there, like just get in the water, start swimming. Don't care if you look stupid at first, but just, just do it and kind of figure it out from there. Like that's the approach that really worked really well for me and what I'm kind of be doing moving forward, because that's what I did in the past as well, a little bit that kind of worked for me. And also I plan on the whiteboard. I mean, I'm actually gonna show it. Like I know it'll look kind of weird if I just show you this. It's funny, like the whiteboard I kept falling and like how you can't even read like most of the writing, but like that's what I did. Like each day I just planned out like three things I was gonna do, and I didn't necessarily. Well, this might be a bit crazy there. So I didn't even necessarily get to all three. Like a lot of these things I didn't even get done, but it sort of at least gave me a lot of different ideas, and a lot of them I did actually kind of use for content. It just meant that whenever like my board is starting to fall down now after grabbing it, so that's kind of funny. Okay, there we go. But that's what I did was I just if I got stuck, I just looked at the board and just just did something from the whiteboard. And you also see like kind of things I kind of wrote at the very bottom, like these different things like easy to start playing, one structure, tricky for white, clear plans and ideas. I kind of was just writing these different things, like GMs aren't properly prepared for it. There are a lot of different Scandinavian approaches. And there are a few others that kind of got rubbed out somehow when I was like trying to hold the board in place because the wind kept blowing it down. But yeah, like that's sort of the language I use. Like at the end of every email, I just put those kind of points at the very end. Like we're going to talk more about this in the next ones, and at the very end, like okay, this is why you should play the Scandinavian, and just kind of gave this summary where even though I was sharing a lot of different content, like a lot that if that structure was there, it could be a bit overwhelming. It just brought it back to okay, these are the key points, and then people could kind of fill the gaps of okay, this was sort of the the thing I saw in that video. Like this is what really resonated with me, and I think that really worked very well, at least based on the results and. I mean, and I'm going to be upfront about sharing because I understand that, people's definition of success may vary. I think I might have shared it actually very early on, but yeah, I had like 23 course sales in a launch period of about like 8 days or so. Yeah, it was like 8 days. We're going to say 9 days actually. It's probably closer to nine in all fairness. So basically I had nine, and so with like 9 days and like 23 course sales. Okay, so it kind of was like just short of free course sales a day, but still, still pretty close. Like we'll just say two and a half or so. So we kind of brought in like 2.2k USD and just over a week, as it were. Students were also pretty happy. I just kind of find like I made like this really silly mistake during launch because I was so focused on the launch and creating content, like I actually forgot to look at the old course. And what happened was like basically I had this black background. And it is a little embarrassing to share. Like I had this black background because I just really like the color black. Like I wear a lot of black shirts. Well, until I met my wife, but I'd wear a lot of black shirts when I was playing like tournaments. Just kind of my favorite color is just black, I guess. And then what happened was like the black background was like covering the numbers, so people could only see like the first part of the course. Like they couldn't see all the extra stuff I did in part two and part three. And I was wondering like why people like asking about the PGN files and stuff like this. So then I just like made a white background, and people were like, oh wow, like this whole other world that I hadn't just discovered, like just completely revealed as such. That was I mean we can laugh about it now because in the end I was able to fix in time, and no harm was done because like it only affected people already in the course. It didn't affect the purchases as such. But it's not just about the students being happy. Like I know that obviously in business, yeah, you should put like the customer first out, helping them the best way you can. From the person I was talking about, doing a way that kind of makes you feel rewarded and fulfilled. And I mean, and for me, like just kind of seeing like I'm like helping like 23 new people at chess I wasn't before. Like that's way more than I could have with private coaching. And even though with private coaching it'd be a much higher, price per sale, as it were. Like this one, it just feels nice to be able to have it where I'm kind of like able to have that bit of like time freedom where I can just, work when I want to. Like say if I had like a really rough night's sleep, like I don't have to work at exactly this time, but I can just adapt based on that. Because spoiler alert, I had a lot of rough nights of sleep while I was doing this launch. But yeah, we made it work. We got things happening. And yeah, just sort of share a few things I could have done better, some things I kind of want to do differently moving forward. I could have done a bit more consistent posts. Like I kind of slacked off a little bit on the lead chess posts because I just felt like they weren't really bringing in many sales. But again, I probably should have done a post on lead chess each day. I just kind of just felt a little, I guess, felt like I would have got burnt out if I'd done it too much. So it's kind of what slowed me down there. I mean, I did at least do like posts on chess.com every, 2 to 3 days and like a Facebook post each day. So at least I did that, which helped. I definitely could have eaten healthier. Like this is me kind of being vulnerable, but I didn't really eat very healthily in the last week or so during this launch. Like I kind of was feeling that financial pressure and kind of resort like to kind of just eating like an unhealthy like snack every day. That's something that I am I'm working on, and I think that now that I've done now a bit more financial secure, I can actually like buy some better food for myself and like just start eating properly the way a high performer should, or way a high performer does. Also, like before this launch, I was exercising a lot, but I had actually let my exercise slip a little bit. Like I did go for a walk every day, but it wasn't really a very long walk. So I think that getting into that gym more, that's something I really want to do moving forward, starting from tomorrow. And also, I could have slept better. Like I mean, I think I still made it work anyway. Like my passion and just sheer force of like loving this game kind of drove me through those times where I did feel tired. Like I still was able to bring that passion, but like I mean, I've got a little bit of a headache, like, because I'm recording this now, so I definitely could have slept a lot better, and it probably would have made things even better. Would allowed me to be a bit more productive and like maybe get in some of those like lead chess like posts, a few of those extra videos, this kind of thing. Yeah, also some other things I could have done better. Like this one's obviously a bit more like high performance kind of level, but a few other little tricks I also could have done is, and this one I kind of only picked up when I was very near the end of the launch, but, so the trick that I kind of learned, this one I picked up from an Alex Hormozy post, by the way, but basically it turns out it was selling a course for like $99 instead of 97. Like if you add like a 9 instead of a 7, like it's going to sell the same anyway. So it is true, like if I had followed this, I would have gotten an extra like $46, which, yeah, that might not seem like a lot, but like every little bit kind of helps. That's like one little trick I could have done right away. Obviously, I also could have warmed up my audience a little bit more, because what I did was with my email is like the very first email I kind of sent was basically like a sales one. And, I did like have some people unsubscribing, like, and really this time I just didn't really care about like people unsubscribing, because I figured, okay, they're probably not going to overbuy from me anyway, so it's not really a big loss. So I just didn't really care, like just fully focus on the sales, which is why I was sort of, I think, kind of brave enough just to promote every day. But I do think if I had warmed up my audience first, like if I had, create like some content, like say even just the week before that, even if it was on the Scandinavian, just like some different like positions, some puzzles, I feel like that would have probably helped. Also, this one was kind of a big opportunity, and I kind of was aware of this, like in the back of my mind, but I just sort of was struggling to figure out what would be the best course to upsell. So I kind of felt, I could do like play E4 like Hikaru, but somehow it just didn't feel quite right to sell that for some reason. Just because I thought, well, then I have to like re-update the whole course, and I wasn't sure if I necessarily wanted to go in that direction because I just wasn't like feeling the passion for that course. So I ultimately decided, well, there isn't another course other than the Scandinavian I feel like as passionately about to upsell, so I decided not to kind of go that path. But I do think if I had an upsell, I would have definitely brought in quite a few more sales, like on the back end. Because when someone purchases, they're a lot more likely to purchase the second time. Like, it would have been something like selling Play for like a car, like for, say $49 instead of 99 or something like this. I do feel like that, yeah, would have brought in some extra sales, but yeah, decided to play a little bit more the long game because I just think that, I'm just a lot more passionate about I think selling a London course probably than an E4 course. So I sort of figured, well, the pit sales I might have missed, with the E4, I might still pick up with the London one later. Maybe that's a limiting mindset. Like, probably I should have just done the upsell and just, not worried about not having exactly what I wanted at that time, but, it is what it is. And also, I kind of mentioned about the course customization, like having that black background, but I was able to, course correct, which is kind of a funny thing to say, but yeah, I was able to course correct there. And finally, I think the other thing as well, like I kind of sort of knew this, but I kind of just got carried away, just with my love for the Scandinavian. But I definitely probably could have done like less updates within the course, just made them more focused and a bit more detailed. Like say, rather than just having like one video on the update, having like a multi-part one. Because I know that for the multi-part ones, did like on the Lajnica variation and on the old main line, like that one, and on the Portuguese, like those were like the ones that really felt the most fulfilling. Like when I was just doing like one update, like just a one-part video, I kind of felt like, okay, you can play this, but there are some problems that sort of didn't feel as emotionally invested in those videos. Whereas when I did the multi-part ones, like even though it felt a little bit overwhelming to kind of do, I do feel like those were, yes, I quite like. I felt like I really believed in the systems a lot more when I kind of did a multi-part video on them. So that was kind of something I kind of, I guess, learned for myself as I was, creating all like these many videos every day. Something I also kind of been meaning to do throughout, just never really quite got around to, was sort of doing the free webinar. I think having a webinar that people actually watched would have been like really quite effective. I will admit, like at the time, like I just felt, well, writing a PowerPoint would take a really long time. I just never really would have got around to it, and that's kind of why actually I did my reason I did this video to see, okay, how does it work to actually do a longer video with a PowerPoint, and based on how this one's gone, I might actually do that, like now that the launch is over, like just have like a webinar that just kind of can just run on repeat and just kind of keep bringing in sales of the course, even when it's not at even when it's not like the original discount price. So I think that's going to be really, gonna be something really fun to try out in the future. Like maybe run some paid ads to it. We'll see how it goes. And also another thing I could have also promoted like a free lead magnet. I mean, I kind of did that with YouTube, but let's say if I had, had like a course, say with say putting some of the free content that I could have been something else I could have like experimented with. Although it might have also been a bit more confusing, like something I was kind of cognizant of. I didn't want to have like so many different things that people felt overwhelmed. Or it was like too much choice. I always tried to make the distinction very clear. Like, okay, this is the free content. This is the free content. This is where you can look at it if you want to, and then really clear saying, okay, this is the course. Like, this is this is what's going to get you the big results. Like, this will get you started. This free stuff get you started, but this is what's going to get the results you're after. Like, I really made sure to make that distinction clear so that people wouldn't feel overwhelmed by like the many links and all the value I was just throwing at people every single day. Um, yeah, and just to kind of conclude, just to sort of take some of these these things I've shared and just sort of put them in like really clear insights. As I sort of mentioned at the start, most people tend to focus on results. I find this journey, but when you're focusing on results, you're not focusing on actually helping people, which is what this really comes down to, and you're communicating that help in a very clear way. Ultimately it's all in the process, and I mean you've kind of seen here like that, even though the results came out, like there was a multi-year process behind it, like all this stuff I had to kind of work through. But when you do find the love in what you do, like when you find that sort of why, that necessity, it really helps you to be able to stay the course and have that consistency that honestly has been a struggle for me for most of my life, if I'm being frank. And that's just kind of being brave, is like talk openly, and even like beyond just talk openly, like in that case I was thinking of my family when I wrote this, but also just kind of like having that courage to say, well, I'm not just going to do something just because someone else like made it work in their niche. Certainly you can get a lot of great ideas from other people's fields, but doing it because it's what you believe in, because like you really believe in your course, you believe in the opening, whatever it is, like that really shines through in the way you communicate. Like that is just so important, and that's something that I'm going to be doing moving forward. Like I'm just not going to launch a course if I don't really strongly believe in it in my heart. So yeah, that's was some of the things. Also, again, it's like that laser focus, just focusing on one thing only, and not just like providing the mass value, like not just having that longer form content and having value to the masses, but also trying to really solve clear problems, like both in the free content and in the course. Like the way I kind of presented was I sort of focused probably a little bit more on say like the inspiration and entertainment perspective in the the free stuff, and I focus more on like the educational like training stuff in the course. But it also one thing kind of happened, like I didn't mention this before, but also I would just take every YouTube video and just put it in the course, meaning that even when people, let's say, like look at the course much later, like say if they were a past student or maybe they joined the course like a long time after I did this launch, well, they still can see the values in the videos and still kind of get the value from that. But I did also like add that additional value, of course, like providing the PGN files to all of like the free stuff as well. Like I'd said, okay, this is the mass value, but if you want to have the PGN files to go with it, to go through yourself, then you do it. That only is within the course. I mean, there were a couple times I did share some PGN files for free just to give a bit of a sample, but yeah, that's the approach that I kind of took. And also, I think that, and this one's kind of explaining a little bit more on the high performance perspective, but I also was thinking about, okay, it's important to show other people how to kind of think. And also by sharing my personal experiences playing the Scandinavian, it kind of allowed me to sort of role model the way. And I think I was also very clear, like, what the purpose of each piece of content, each video was. Like, am I doing this to inspire? Am I doing this to entertain? Or am I doing it to persuade? And I think what happens, I kind of end up doing like a combination of all three, which was kind of fun. But I think that for people who are, maybe starting out with these sorts of influence models where maybe haven't been in the high performance scene for quite as long, you can just like focus on one and just kind of, gradually weed things in from there with experience. And the other big one is just kind of asking for help from the right people, but I kind of did it a different way. Like I knew that I already had like the marketing, like I already knew that I had knew the marketing theory, like that wasn't the root issue. I knew I didn't need new strategies or, like kind of, marketing techniques or whatever. Like I've already studied this for so many years already. And it's true that these things do change over time, but I knew that my fundamentals were very strong there. I knew that the help I needed was on the psychological side. It was on working through like the past trauma. It was on, finding the love again in it. It was in getting, that more open communication with my family. And when I worked on that, that's what allowed these kind of results, like having this really successful course launch to ultimately happen. And yeah, I kind of put this slide twice, just bear with me. And just kind of share a little bit of what's coming up. Like I realize, you've watched like to the end of this video. This might be the longest one I've ever done on YouTube. So, because I remember like when I had that sort of breakdown in 2022, like with all the family pressure and like the business stuff, like just completely getting to me. Like there was a time where I just couldn't even watch something for more than like 30 minutes, so my brain would just like zone out. Like my brain was just so messed up back then. Like it's wild looking at how far I've come since that sort of breakdown. But yeah, do let me know like, what you really loved just in the comments below. Probably should have asked this a bit sooner for engagement, but I guess if you comment, we know you're one of the hardcore ones. Which I mean in a good way, of course. Yeah, I was gonna like be sharing more stories. Like, I'm probably gonna focus more on like chess raid stories. This one's a bit different to what I'd normally create for the channel, but if this video does end up being like, one of the more popular ones, it does, it tells me that you do want more like this. So again, if you do hit that like button, it tells me, to make more videos like this one in the future. I'll also be like checking games from different tournaments for good ideas. Like, I think I haven't really followed like the chess like tournaments for the last week so much because it's so focused on Scandinavian. But do you think there's like the Women's World Chess Championship that's starting pretty soon, if I remember correctly? So that's one example. But yes, I'll be checking that for some ideas. Also, on like the more business side of things, there is a free course I will be sharing quite soon. So I will be doing a video on that in the near future. I might end up also like writing some ebooks, maybe for Chessable. Also, maybe creating like a Discord server as well, just kind of put the people from all my different channels in one place. Because I kind of like people from like YouTube, but also the email list, also Facebook, also chess.com, even a little bit from Lead Chess as well. So I really feel like having a place where we can just like bring everyone together could be a fun idea, but I don't want to, overload myself too much because, I have burned out a lot of paths. I do sometimes get overloaded for too many things going on at once. So I'm, going to be pacing myself a little bit with some of these things, but just, letting you know where my head is at right at this moment, realizing it will probably change in the future. And yeah, my next paid course, like I'm not going to launch it right away. I think people, after like, was marketing, like people need a little bit of a break, so I'm just going to, share some free value, share a free course, and next paid one's probably going to be on either the London or the Benko Gambit for Black, because vision I kind of have is to basically have like free courses to just give you a complete repertoire for white and black, because I can potentially make like a bundle deal and do some fun things there. But yeah, that's what I have planned. Again, thank you so much for your attention. It's not something that I take for granted, and I'm really glad that my experiences, for all the pain and the blood, sweat, and tears that's come along this way, that that other people at least getting something out of it at the end of the day. So thank you so much for that, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.